Welcome back. Regrettably, we're on to the home stretch, the final few segments of TwinTech 2020, our digital Rubicon. I'm so excited to be here with Anna Catalano, my good friend, Twin co-founder, who will interview on our behalf a new friend of mine. We've met a couple of times over the past year in various ways, and as we like to say in Twin, never leaves serendipity to chance. So when serendipity intervened not once but twice, I said, we have to get this person to Twin. Not only serendipity, but how often do you meet someone who both makes extraordinary change happen in the world as CEO of XPRIZE, but who's also been an astronaut? Yes, this is an unretouched photo. So you knew we had to make this happen. Anousheh Ansari and I met last year, the first time at the United Nations through Kunal Sood, the founder of Novus. And then later on, we were reintroduced by Maria Filipova and her team at Anthem, our great sponsor and partner for TwinTech. Anna, all yours.
Thanks, Rob. In 2006, Anousheh Ansari captured headlines around the world when she embarked on an 11-day space expedition, becoming the first female private space explorer, the first astronaut of Iranian descent, the first Muslim woman in space, and the fourth private explorer to visit space. Among her many notable achievements, Anousheh is CEO of XPRIZE Foundation, the world's leader in designing and operating incentive competitions to solve some of humanity's grandest challenges. So Anousheh, welcome to Twin. I am so glad Rob invited you to join.
Oh, thank you, Anna. It's wonderful to be with you and Rob and participate in this wonderful event.
That's great. So the topic that we were assigned to talk about today is the topic of purpose. And although you and I could probably spend a lot of time talking about many topics, I need to try and stay true to this. So on the topic of purpose, it occurs to me that you must have at some point felt that it was your purpose to become an astronaut. So at what point in time did you start thinking about that purpose?
I was very young. I was probably 6, 7 years old, growing up in Iran. And I don't think I thought about it in the sense of this was my purpose. But the fact that I was curious and I wanted to know more about what's out there in the night skies when I looked up at night is what drew me to space and astronomy, astrophysics, and wanting to become an astronaut. And it became something that I was just fixated and fascinated with. And basically throughout my life, I've sort of been trying to find my way to find a way to live in space maybe at some point. I even prayed for aliens to come and abduct me when I was a little kid. So,
not many people pray for aliens to come and abduct them, but I think that just goes to show your brain was wired a little bit differently, and it was your destiny to become what you are. Let's talk about scaling that impact. There are people who become astronauts and then they stop at being an astronaut because that's actually quite a lot. And for a lot of people, quite enough to become an astronaut. I mean, to go into space, to be on the space station, that's quite an accomplishment. But you did that and decided you weren't done. Because not only do you want to inspire people individually, you now run an organization that hopes to inspire organizations around the world to solve complex problems. So tell me a little bit about the work that you do and what drives your sense of organizational purpose, enterprise purpose, in the organization you run, XPRIZE.
I'm actually one of those people who can just sit there and do nothing. You will never find me lounging
I find that surprising.
So I don't think I'm ever done until I'm dead. But it comes from that sense of, you talked about purpose, actually. So when I looked at the night skies, those, early years in Iran, I was trying to figure out why I'm here, why I'm on this planet called Earth and not someplace else, and why now, and why in Iran. So I always felt there is a purpose to life of every single person on this planet, and you have to just find it and make sure you achieve that. So that's how you completely live your life. And when I went to the International Space Station, not only I achieved the dream, but also I had this incredible opportunity to look at the world through a different lens, through the lens of being in space and looking at our planet, not looking for my country, but looking at my planet as my home. So it was looking at a place where all of my dreams, all of my education, my memories, my school, everything I knew and I was in front of me, and I was able to be in this position to look at it and reflect back on it. And what I saw was this amazing, beautiful world that is very unique, and it had such energy in this dark background of the space behind it. And for the first time, all those books you see in the geography lessons where you have these big lines drawn that separates us all sort of disappeared, and we were all one. And we had this beautiful gift of a planet that sometimes we have a hard time understand or appreciate. And it was a humbling experience, an empowering experience at the same time. It was humbling because I would sort of zoom out and see the universe and how small our planet is and how small me and my life is compared to the universe. And on the other hand, everything in front of me shrunk. So the problems and issues of the world also shrunk to a smaller size, to a manageable size, where I felt empowered that we can do something. And when I saw the entire humanity as one sort of collective unit and the problems shrinking, I felt like there's nothing that we can't do if we just work together.
You're dealing with a lot of very, very complex problems that you're trying to solve. What do you think is the greatest challenge for people to kind of get their arms around some of these big issues?
I think sometimes the problems are so big or so complex that not many people have the wherewithal to think about it or try to even solve it. So lack of information and knowledge is one area. The other area is some of these problems will take a long time before you can solve it, or all the risks involved with the failure in solving it and the investments required. So getting people to invest in these types of very, very high risk and very long-term potential return is difficult. So that's why competitions work well in these scenarios, because with the prize purse, with the competition, you put like a little carrot that's not too far out, but enough to get someone interested to actually try to solve the problem. So you create that initial interest. And through the lens of the competition, we're also able to really break apart the problem, a complex problem, into the most important pieces, what usually engineers and developers talk about most viable product. So we're able to set the parameters of the competition around solving not everything, but those most difficult, most important issues involved with solving the problem. And we set those as criteria for winning the prize. And one way that X Prize is very different than other organizations that may use competition is that we're not satisfied with just the idea and a solution that's on paper. We want you to build the solution and physically demonstrate that you've solved the problem before we award the prize. That's why the prizes we run usually are maybe 4 or 5 years and very complex, and the prize purses are in tens of millions of dollars.
So you must see a lot of crazy ideas that come your way. Can you share with us what is the craziest thing you've seen come through X Prize that people try and do? I'm curious. You must get all kinds of bizarre ideas and off the wall people that come trying to win these purses. So yes. Is there something that stands out that was just fantastic or hilarious that that you've witnessed that you can share?
First of all, we love crazy ideas. We believe that the day before anything is a breakthrough is a crazy idea, and that's the motto that our founder Peter has instilled in us. So we love crazy ideas, but we also have seen people come from all walks of life. One of the stories that we tell around the office is one of our prizes was an oil cleanup prize, where this was, I think, after the oil spill, Exxon Valdez oil spill, and we launched a quick challenge to really advance the technology of oil cleanup, and it was an industry no one had touched for decades. And when we launched the prize, actually one of the finalists was a team that came about because there was a dentist who wanted to get a tattoo, and he went to a tattoo parlor and started talking to the tattoo artist about this thing he read about an oil cleanup prize. And they started talking about, well, what do you use for cleaning the ink for the tattoo, and what do you use in dentistry? And they started, talking and came up with a solution out of their knowledge of dentistry and being a tattoo artist, and created a solution that made it all the way to the finals. We had the junior high school team also win. We had the high school team that was part of our 100 miles down, one of the earlier prizes we launched. So we see all ages and all backgrounds in competitions, and so we don't dismiss the ideas at the beginning unless it breaks the laws of physics, which sometimes we see people using solutions that we know it breaks the laws of physics. So we don't pay too much attention.
So breaking the laws of physics is crossing the line of craziness, but I love the idea that the day before something is a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. At Twin, one of the things we pride ourselves on is one of the pieces of magic of this organization is that we bring together what I call people from different orbits. And that's a good word to use because I'm talking to an astronaut. But the benefit of talking to people who aren't customarily in that field of study is often what will unlock the innovation, because people think differently. So the idea of a dentist and a tattoo artist getting together to solve the problem of an oil spill is just great for me, because you have a lot of people who are in that business that can't think outside the box because they've been doing it a certain way, and they keep incrementalizing. And sometimes to solve these big problems, incrementalizing is not going to get the solution, right? So I think it's wonderful that you attract people who aren't bound by the regular rules of who can work with whom to solve problems, and you encourage collaboration. That's a very Twinian thing that X Prize is all about. What advice do you give to people who just they just keep running into one wall after another, and they're giving up? What advice do you give to people that are about ready to give up?
So let me maybe start by the first part of your question, which is about actually going after something and what stops us sometimes. And that has to do with fear and allowing ourselves to be fearful of failure. Sometimes, especially as we achieve more in life, if we have a good life, good job, and in a comfortable place in life, it's hard to take risks. So you can achieve anything great without taking great risk. And a lot of times, especially young women, what I've seen is as women, when we grow up, we're taught to be perfect. So it becomes difficult for us to take on things that are risky and have a high chance of failure, because then our perfect record is broken. Limited thinking is what usually prevents us from going after big dreams and big ideas. And if you're going after something you are truly, truly passionate about, and when you sleep, when you are walking, when you are, sort of in the shower, you're thinking about this. This is what comes to your mind when you have any time to yourself. That means you're passionate about something. And big things are difficult to achieve. And because they're difficult, you're bound to, hit your head against several walls before you can get through. And when you when you reach a place where you're not making progress and you're hitting the wall one after another, sometimes you just need to take a break. You just need to sit down and re-energize and maybe look for a different way. Maybe you should not try to go through the wall. Maybe you should go over the wall, around the wall. So finding another way, maybe it's taking a step back and trying to look around and find a different path. In life, I wanted to live a life where I don't have regrets and make sure that if something is important enough for me, that I have at least tried it and give it my best energy to achieve it. And if I still can't succeed, then I didn't succeed, but I did everything that was possible and in my power to do. And I think I would recommend people look at it through that lens, because imagine if you're 90 years old and you're looking back at your life and you come across that point that you gave up. Would you feel good about it, or would you wish that you didn't and you continue to try? And if the answer is you wish you could have tried, then your answer is there. Try it. Don't give up.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is someone who definitely knew what her purpose was. No doubt about that. At a young age, she looked at the night sky and was curious, she said, and wondered what it would be like to go up there. And then once she was up there, she looked back on a planet and realized that there was more to do. What an inspirational story. The day before anything is a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. Don't allow ourselves to be too afraid of failure. And the largest barrier to whether or not people can achieve what they want is limited thinking. Anousheh, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a real treat for me personally. I know it's been a real treat for everyone who's watching today. We do look forward to welcoming you in person at a future Twin event and hope you can join us. Thanks a lot for your inspiration and for your story.
Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you face to face one day soon.
We're coming down to the end of Twin Tech 2020, our digital Rubicon. And for our penultimate segment, I'm so excited to introduce to you a good friend of mine, a colleague at the Kellogg School of Management, Professor Nicholas Pierce, who also happens to be a pastor at the Apostolic Church of God in Chicago. The Apostolic Church entered the history books many years ago when Dr. Martin Luther King visited and preached at that church during his visit to Chicago. There's no one better to address the topic of purpose and why. With that, Professor Nicholas Pierce. Nicholas, join me on stage. And let's do the there you go, the COVID elbow bump.
The COVID-19 pandemic has been one of the most globally disruptive forces of our lifetimes. It's laid bare the terribly clear social, economic, educational, and health inequities that have fueled contemporary society as we knew it. Yes, knew it. Many are hoping that we'll simply be able to return to a pre-pandemic normal, a version of life as we knew it, as though this pandemic is nothing more than a terrible passing storm. It's just an interruption in our status quo. To be sure, this has been a cataclysmic storm of epic proportions for many of us, resulting in the loss of lives, the loss of livelihoods, the loss of vision, and certainly deferred dreams. We have seen the adverse effects of psychological and physical distancing, social distancing from our support systems, relational and financial stress, cultural change, and other effects too numerous to name. Yet, this pandemic is not simply a terrible blizzard that has come to paralyze us for a while and then melt away. According to one of my colleagues, this pandemic is more like the dawn of a mini ice age, a once-in-a-lifetime shift that is unfreezing our assumptions about the way things have always been and must forever be. I'd argue that this is a time for all of us to rethink our scripts and to rethink our playbooks and to rethink our routine. It's a time for us to summon the resilience and the clarity that will allow us to see the opportunities that lie before us. This is an opportunity to create a more just, more loving society. It's an opportunity to make poverty and hunger relics of a bygone era. This is an opportunity to make access to clean water and quality health care and quality education the basic human rights that they always should have been. This is an opportunity to care for all of creation so that our children's children's children will be able to enjoy a sustainable world. No matter how beautiful our homes may be, Emerson said it's no good if the planet they're on isn't too solid. This is a moment to truly commit to no opportunity being wasted. But the question I pose to you this day is, which opportunity is yours to seize? Which work is yours to do? Why have you even survived through all of the vicissitudes of your life and through the various decades and ups and downs? Why have you survived all those challenges that cost others their lives to be able to have this conversation with yourself right now? The answer, I believe, is that you have the opportunity now, today, to embrace your unique purpose path. So every single one of us has a purpose. Every single one of us has a reason for being that's as unique to us as our very own DNA. Whether you're 10 or 110 or somewhere in that big middle, there's a reason why you're still on the planet. None of us knows how many years we have left in our lives, but we can all make it our business to ensure that there is life left in our years. And in a moment like this, I believe with all my heart that it is easy to be paralyzed by the enormity of the moment, or even scatterbrained. On the other hand, trying to pursue every opportunity as it comes up, even if those opportunities are not the ones that you have been uniquely well suited to address. Before you go figuring out your purpose and putting this on your master to-do list, I want to encourage you with a thought from a friend of mine named Parker Palmer. Parker says purpose doesn't work like that. Parker says that it's not a goal to be achieved, but a gift to be received. This means that no matter how fast the future is coming at us, we have to commit to being still enough to discern which part in the symphony of human progress is ours to play. Before we go haphazardly picking up the nearest instrument and investing our time and talent in the wrong space. I know we live in a productivity-crazed society, and in this world of ours, it is tempting to look at stillness and misinterpret it as counterproductive. It is tempting to view hyperactivity as the only purposeful use of one's life and time. But on the contrary, stillness has the power to center us and to refresh us for the grueling journey ahead of us. And if the truth be told, some of us refuse to be still because we don't like ourselves and who we've become so much that we're afraid of what introspection and self-reflection and stillness, maybe even prayer, might reveal to us about how we've been misusing our gifts, abusing ourselves, and robbing the world of the gift of our unique genius. See, to walk along our unique purpose path, we can't start by looking at the world around us and all of its attendant difficulties and challenges and opportunities. We must first turn within to ask ourselves, how does your soul define success? Not how do others define it, not how do your neighbors define it, not how does your family or your company or your board or your network define it. How do you define it? So most of us don't take the time to even consider how we ourselves define success. We just take the definitions that are handed to us for granted. We take those definitions and we start climbing the nearest ladder. But there comes a point where we must reckon with the fact that it might be the case that we've been climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. There comes a point at which we recognize that while perhaps we've been scoring well on the various scorecards that have been handed to us by our families or our organizations or even the media, there's an internal alarm that refuses to be silenced, that you cannot snooze, alerting us to the sobering fact that we have failed to attend to the scorecard of our own souls. We've spent more time and energy trying to impress people who don't even like or care about us than we have spent living into the truest expression of who we've always been created to be. And once you waken yourself to that alarm, you can't unhear it. Thus begins the journey of purpose. It's a journey of what I call vocational courage. This idea of vocation is not about a blue-collar trade or career. Vocation comes from a Latin word meaning calling. It is a journey of having the courage to respond to your calling. It's a journey on which you develop clarity regarding your life's work, and a journey on which you build the stubborn resolve to make the difficult decisions that are necessary to align your daily work with your life's work. It's the invitation to bravely conjoin your soul with your role and be who you were created to be before you do what you were created to do. This is not an easy call by any stretch of the imagination, but it is an urgent one. In fact, I would argue that it's the most urgent call you will ever receive, and there is no amount of call screening that will allow you to escape it. It requires strength, requires bravery. It will be difficult and perhaps even at times a bit dangerous. It requires the reckless humility to know that you did not create yourself, and also receiving the gift of the assurance of knowing that just like clay on the potter's wheel, you are loved and molded by your Creator into becoming your very best. Not for your benefit, not for your praise, not for your ability to amass accolades and materialistic, capitalistic trophies, but for the good of humanity. Having your feet firmly planted on your purpose path will give you the vision you need to see the challenges of a fast approaching future and see your unique place in the solution. And if your vision only involves you working along your purpose path by yourself, allow me to nudge you here and humbly suggest that your vision just might be a bit too small. Transformation of any scale takes collaboration. And if there's anything our world needs more of now, it is people who know how and have the will to reach beyond the boundaries of their respective tribe, to love and serve with one another for the greater good. Our environment needs you. Our institutions public and private, need you. Our children need you. Our cities and towns and nations need you. The generationally unhoused and unfed and unemployed and unequally treated need you. I need you. You need me. Time is now. The moment is now. This is the moment we've been waiting for, and the decision is yours. The decision is mine. So I will leave you with the words of this wonderful benediction. May the road rise to meet us. May the wind always be at our backs as we traverse this purpose path.
Nicholas, that was more than we could ever have hoped for. Thank you again so much for being here. I knew you would bring that, but it's truly a treat and a gift.
Thank you for having me.
So I have a question for you. You work with executives, you work with students at Kellogg, you work with your parishioners at the church and friends. This is a big challenge you've given us to find not only purpose, but to start with stillness, something we're not so familiar with. What is one action or exercise or piece of advice you can offer to help us understand how do we even get started with that notion of stillness?
I think part of this whole idea of stillness is really an act of faith. It is admitting to oneself that the world does not turn because of our activity. The world turns, the sun rises and sets based on the power of God beyond us. And so part of this is an exercise in admitting to ourselves that no matter how high capacity and how high octane we are, not only can the world afford for us to press pause, but we can't afford not to press pause. That we can actually receive more being still than we can running feverishly, because we ceaselessly strive and we work and we toil and we exert energy doing, because we think that our doing is our value.
We've been taught that.
Absolutely we have. That we are really worth no more than the value of what we produce. And that makes us into human doings, not human beings. And you and I have both written about this idea that automation is threatening, or at least challenging, the very reality of what it means to be a human being. Because if we chart our humanity based on our deeds, on our productivity, and machines can now outproduce the deeds, then what does that leave us with? And that leaves us with the one thing that a machine can never have, and that is a soul. A self-determined desire to understand, why am I here and what should I do about it, and the ability to connect with one's creator.
And that doesn't happen simply by being frenetic every moment of the day.
Not at all. Not at all. You cannot hear while you're talking. Right?
I'm sorry, what?
You can't. Exactly.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry. Yeah, broke the mood.
No, that's good.
No, but I mean, your comment, I've never thought about it that way, but stillness is an act of faith. It also sounds, Nicholas, like stillness is an act of courage, because you never know what might be staring back. And one way to avoid it, as you said in your remarks, was to just keep moving. But it's also a very rational act, because it sounds like we could unlock far more by so doing. Well, I took so much from your comments: a loss of vision and deferred dreams, unfreezing of our assumptions, rethinking our playbooks. Which opportunity is yours to unlock? Because we must avoid being paralyzed or scatterbrained. We also must, though, ask these questions before we put it on our master to-do list. Be still enough. How often have we been told this by our parents, by our teachers, by our pastors, by certainly our boss? Be more still. Have we been misusing our gifts? This is a concern to reflect on every day. How does your soul define success? Do we have even asked that question? We've been awakened to this alarm, Nicholas, and we cannot unhear it. One of the reasons I invited you is you're able to span various areas in the world, various, as our good friend Anna Catalano says, orbits. And we bring words to each other that you don't often hear in business or government or large NGOs, and that's the word that you used 4 times, which is love. And it's a word that all of our Twinians know we mean here. We are here, we are twinned because we love each other. We don't love each other because we're here. It's the opposite. Nicholas, the world needs more of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Wow. Thanks so much to Nicholas Pierce and Anusha Ansari and Anna Catalano. What fantastic words to share with us today. And I have back here at Impact House with Christy Ross and also Moran Cerf out in the great state of New York. We'll start with you, Moran. What are your reflections in the past couple of hours?
So there are so many ideas that storm into my mind. I actually noticed that the word brain appeared in pretty much every person's talk.
Well, now wait a minute. Of course, you're a neuroscientist. Of course you would hear brain in everybody's talk, even if it's not there.
Yeah, I just see brains everywhere. So one thing that really kind of interested me was that there was a theme that emerged in both David's talk and Jesus's talk about what we call in neuroscience embodied cognition, how the body manifests in the brain and how they interact. I think Jesus spoke about the smiles and how they affect your mindset, and David spoke about the systems interacting in us. In neuroscience, we speak about it often where, we talk about examples like putting a pencil in your mouth that make you kind of half smile and suddenly everything becomes funny because you're already prone to smile. We speak about exactly. This makes everything I say much funny. We speak about even all kinds of effects of modern day technology like Botox, which some facial muscles on our facial. Suddenly there's no feedback back and you kind of feel a bit different about certain emotions. I think what's interesting here is that in a way our brain was evolved into living in a world that has essentially 4 building blocks that kind of determine what is going to change us. I think Jesus mentioned 2. He said fighting and flighting. Neuroscientists speak about the 4 Fs, the fighting, the fearing, the feeding, and the mating. And in that sense, the 4 Fs are kind of dominant in how we behave. And in that sense, what's new to us is the understanding of how the environment actually interacts with our brain, how the temperature in your room right now is different than the temperature where I am right now. And it might change how we experience the entire content. How heavy is your vest on you right now might change the weight of the thoughts that you can conjure in you. And to me, what's interesting is that in all of the world of Zoom and conversations online and video calls and so on, one thing that we kind of should be aware of is that if we put bodies in different locations, there are some differences in the experiences of reality. We don't smell the same thing. The lighting is different. And in a way, if we take what David and Jesus said, that there is a meaning to the environment on changing our mindset, there's still one gap that is going to exist when we're not really experiencing the world the same way, even though the content is delivered the same way.
Right. So, but as virtual experiences get more and more comprehensive, we can start to turn those knobs. But we'll go to Christy. We'll go to you in 1 second. But Moran, you've shared with me a couple of times really interesting research, something about the temperature of liquids affecting people's responses to. Could you briefly share that?
Sure. In the most brief way, the experiment goes like this. You come to the lab, someone gives you a cup of tea, shakes your hands, and you sit down and write an essay describing your mom. How do you feel about your mom? And quickly, when they look at the essays, they realize that there's 2 groups of people. Some people write very warm and loving things about their mothers. The others wrote nasty and hostile things. And what determines more than anything which group you're going to land in is the tea that you received in the beginning. Those who received a cup of hot tea and were asked to hold it in their hand while they're writing had warm thoughts kind of emerge in them because they were feeling warm in the body and they wrote warmer things. Those that got iced tea had manifestation of the negative thoughts and immediately wrote negative things. Wow. So embodied cognition, it happens.
Well, note to self, no more iced tea at twin events. Okay, all right. So Christy, reflections.
Well, first of all, I just want to comment on that. The external, the physical really does, affect the emotional, and the emotional affects the physical, like in so many different ways. So but I love that example. I have to remember that myself. So when I look at, first of all, Nicholas Pierce, he has a powerful introspective challenge for each one of us. Yes. And when I look at all the different talks, it really puts it in this order for me because I am type A and very organized. It says, okay, number one, slow down. And number two, be reflective. And number three, really imagine reimagine what your purpose is. But when I start to tie all of these different talks together, I have to say that Anusha mentioned something with being an astronaut, sort of that reflectiveness, so that's step two, if you will. When she's up in space and she looks at the world below, it's so much smaller, so much more manageable, and you feel empowered to, do more, be more, and more collaboratively and collectively, because the lines disappear. You become one, and that to me it really spoke to me. And then the reimagining, our purpose. It's funny when Nicholas Pierce was talking. It was one of those things like, I got to put this down on my to-do list, right? It is, okay, I need to go take more risks and experience more because, I'm going to learn more and really be able to take a closer look at what really speaks to me. But it really is more about stopping and looking introspectively as well as externally and sort of making sure you're pulling all those pieces together. What speaks to you? But so it was really about tying all of these talks together that really sort of put it in perspective for me.
Well, and we're not trained to take a step back, be still for a bit, and contemplate. Christy, you and I earlier were chatting about some personal connections you had with Jesus Montas's conversation. If you could share a little bit of that. And thank you for sharing this. We discussed this in advance, and Christy said I'd be happy to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Jesus's talk was a little too close to home, I guess I'll say. In a certain sense, sort of a chillingly familiar story. When I was 16, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and passed away a year later. But I have 3 girls of my own, and they're all in that teenage age range that I was at that time.
Right.
And it's interesting what I was thinking then. I don't think I put all the pieces together at age 16, but now I'm at a different vantage point.
Yeah.
And I really view that differently. And I think that really throughout my life, it was, I didn't realize it until I look in the rearview mirror, but I had this mantra, this movement of make sure I'm doing what I love and loving what I'm doing, because I'm spending, all my time doing it. You've heard that before, right? That's a phrase, a quote that's out there, but I've really sort of embraced that because I want to make sure life is short, time is short, and in general, you want to make sure that every bit of what you're doing is focused on the right things, and maybe it's the whatever that right purpose is. So all of those things really spoke to me, and Jesus was so wonderfully eloquent in the all of the things that he had shared with us. So
well, your story reminds me of the Livongo discussion, and if we fast forward to today and in the near future, as technology gets better and better at monitoring us on a regular basis, at predicting challenges. I mean, your mother had this challenge in your life. My father passed away of an aortal aneurysm when he was 63 unexpectedly, and I reflect many times about how constant monitoring of our bodies in minute detail, could that have prevented his death?
right.
Similar to the technology we have today, enabling us to help Jesus and for Jesus to help himself so much more. It's a hopeful sign. So we're coming down to the end of our trialogue here, our concluding remarks for Twin Tech 2020. Definitely not our last conversation, but I'd like to give each of you last words, 3 words to describe how you feel about across the Rubicon. What's next? 3 words to describe. Don't describe them. Don't explain them. Just the 3 words. Hyphens are acceptable. Who would like to go first?
Oh, you can go first, Moran.
That's 4 words. That could be your. Okay, Moran.
Okay, I'll start. Scale.
Scale.
communication,
Communication.
spirituality. I feel I need to explain the third one, but I won't. I'll leave it lasting.
Scale, communication, spirituality. I'm so glad you said that, and I was so excited to put Nicholas Pierce, the pastor, on that digital stage with those stained glass windows. Christy, your 3 words.
Information, collaboration. I'm going to say reflection.
Information, collaboration, reflection. I'm going to say love, love, and love. The space of life at different scales. We heard about scale from David Krakauer, the scale of ages. We heard about space from Anousheh Ansari. Our journey today, our journeys through life, are about the spaces of life at different scales. With Twin, my hope is, our hope is, that our journeys are better together. Thank you so much to Moran and Christy, and if we could roll some concluding comments that we recorded earlier this summer for TwinTech 2020, and then we'll return for a concluding song from our friends in Tallinn, Estonia. I have a bit of a prediction. Where we're going in the future, where we're going will be far different from where we are today. That doesn't seem like much of a stretch. But I think we have a sense for some of the ways it will be different. And it's based on some work that neuroscientist Moran Cerf and I have been doing for a while, a thought experiment, a philosophical experiment about how the world might be different after we've entered what we call the post-virtual world. What do we mean by this? There will be a point later in our lives, I don't know if it's 10 years, 20, or 50, but there will be a point where virtual reality becomes so realistically experienced we cannot tell the difference from traditional reality. Once we have passed the point where virtual is experientially indistinguishable from traditional experience, we will thus be in the post-virtual world. Why? Because no one will ask a stupid question like, should we meet in the virtual cafe or should we meet in the real cafe? The question will not make any sense. Life will become a dimensionality of various experiences. In fact, in such a virtual world, literally anything will be possible from an experiential perspective. So as we transition to this world where literally anything is possible, we don't know exactly what that will look like, but one prediction I will make is whatever it becomes will be far different than we imagine today. And I'll use a historical analog, how I've been thinking about this transition, and that is the earlier transition of 5 centuries ago from the Renaissance to the Enlightenment. You might recall the early leaders of the Renaissance, or the rebirth, were not saying to themselves, let's go discover science and figure out what's really going on out there. That is not at all how it started. What was going on at the time was a few people around Europe, starting in Italy and then spanning out across the continent, said, we need to rediscover the knowledge of the ancients. And when we rediscover what had already been known by the ancients, we will know all that is necessary to know. What they discovered along that path was quite different. Entire new vistas they had never imagined before. The field of science was, during that later period leading up to the Renaissance, literally invented. So the future they sought was far different than the one they discovered. We are already crossing. The question is, to where? Some of this, to where, will be determined by the what that we do, the whys we do it, how we show up in the world, and perhaps to some extent the stillness we find to discover that place inside that suggests where we should go in the future. But before asking where we should go, consider what we aspire to become. Before asking where you should go, consider what you aspire to become. And now I'd like to return to my own hometown and to this, another picture from Lincoln Shots of Lake Michigan. This image to me speaks of hopefulness aspiration, opportunity. And if you look far out to the horizon, you can say to yourself, there's something there, I can feel it, but I'm not quite sure. I'm ready to find out. In my life, one of the things I do to find insight, to find inspiration, to perhaps sometimes recover, is to seek horizons. Let me say this again, because I literally mean seeking horizons. So when I go to the lake front to spend some time to think about twin tech or any other aspect of my life, I love the entire tableau, but I'm always drawn to that thin line across the edge of my visual field. And that thin line of the horizon encapsulates so much about the questions I have in my mind and where I hope we will all lead. And let me take you to a different horizon that was meaningful to the transitions we're going through now with TWIN, the World Innovation Network, the movement toward a new structure, a membership network, the next horizons for TWIN, and that was in Bhutan. Some of you have heard me speak of this before. I've been going for the past 5 years for abroad and for other purposes, but last year, my family, Ada and our 2 daughters, Jolie and Sage, had the opportunity to go to Bhutan with abroad. And I tell you, I teared up many times seeing my daughters having this experience that I jealously would have loved to have had when I was their age. But there was a moment when we were walking up to the tiger's nest on the side of a mountain where I, as often do, stopped and scanned the horizon, a very different horizon than this. One of mountains and peaks and jagged edges and greens and browns, very different, so it creates different insights. And the question that came to my mind was, where to the rest of your career? What is this next phase? And why are you doing all these things you're doing? And I realized one of the single most important things for me, for my life, is to spend it with people whom I love and respect. That word that Nicholas used 4 times in his segment, love, is serious and multifarious, essential. And so I thought if spending more time with people whom I love and respect is the objective, is the condition I would like to find myself, then we need to take TWIN to the next level. We need to make it explicit. We need to have more roles, more opportunities, more homes for people, more ways to grow this global connective, this feeling of community, because it is this community of trusted relationships that will help each of us amplify our missions and our purpose in the world. Thank you again for joining us for Twin Tech 2020. I can't wait to see what's next. I hope you'll join us, and as always, to the future.
When the music plays, I can hide away and feel no fear from time. So this is how and why I stopped time. When the music plays, I can hide away and feel no fear from time. Nothing passes by, nothing goes wrong, but nothing goes right. The pieces of my heart were burning fast, so damn fast. The flames were reaching clouds, white as bright. So this is how and why passes by, nothing goes wrong, but nothing goes right. It's you. It's you. So I just stop the time. I just stop the time. It's the pieces of my heart were burning fast, so damn fast. Afraid of burning fast, I had to stop. I hope this time is not the last. I hope it's not the last. To have no future and to have no past. To have no past. So this is how and why I stopped time. When the music plays, I can hide away and feel no fear from time. Nothing passes by, nothing goes wrong, but nothing goes right. And now, when times must go on, please do carry me on. In your heart and in your mind, in this chapter of your memories, for beautiful times. Remember, I did stop time. So, here we are in the world of music where anything is possible. And so we're going to play one more for you and let your thoughts fly away or come inside of you even more present than ever before. Here we go with something you might recognize. In the suit, on the news, everybody talk through, bang, bang, shot dead, everybody gone mad. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. Beat me, hate me, you can never break me, will me, thrill me, you can never kill me, sue me, everybody do me, kick me, don't you black or white me. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. Until the waters become my rights, and my invisible because you ignore me. Yeah. Your proclamation promised me free liberty. Government don't see it, but it froze the world towards the end. He wouldn't let it be known. Everybody do me, get me, kick me, don't you black or white me. All I wanna